Hey everyone, welcome back to another speed build. If you're new here, welcome, feel free to introduce yourself down in the comments below and maybe make some new friends. I hope you've all had a really great weekend, and if you've been missing the summer and the sun, then this speed build is just the one for you. This build is such a fun tropical build in Solani, the world that came with island living, and it sits on a lot of Admiral's wreckage. Now, for this particular build, if you want to download it, it is kind of important that you put it on this specific lot, at least if you want to put it in Solani, because it has to be the right size and also it has to be landlocked. If you choose to try to put it on one of the beachfront lots, I don't even know if you can do it, but I know that the pools won't go there, and this whole lot is kind of made up of one big pool. For some reason you can't really do a lot of terrain manipulation or do pools on the ground on those beachfront lots. I think it's because it's complicated, with the beach being there. Anyway, all this means is that you can't put it on a beachfront lot, and I know this lot works very well, and then the landscaping also matches, so what's not to like. So if you haven't guessed it already, this is kind of like a Mermaid's Hangout lot. It's obviously a little bit different than the normal houses I usually post because there is no walls, there is no house here, there is no roof, nothing like that, and there's obviously, no rooms. So you'll see me going back and forth all the time in this build. I always, go back and adjust things a million times and move them around again. It's kind of a different experience when you don't work with rooms, because usually you can kind of tell when a room is kind of done. But with this, the layout of everything is kind of fluid, and there is no clear, this has to go there, or, there is no bedrooms, nothing to kind of separate it. So you have to constantly look for items that can look as sort of a separator or something like that. And it was a lot of fun. But you will just, see the actual process of what it was like, me going into debug a bunch of times and coming back out and moving the same things around, changing the colors, and I always change the colors and move things around in a room, but usually I don't go back and forth that much. At least I try to group it together in my videos, so you'll see me working on the kitchen first. But because there's no walls to separate the different rooms, it would look kind of silly if you saw me finish off the kitchen and just saw everything move in the background all the time. So I decided to just go with the flow and show you the actual process. Now, this is me putting down fences, and I really should have done that before I put down the cliffs, because oh my god, that was such a pain to fix, because I kept leaving holes and I ended up having to move them out of the way anyway. But you might be wondering why I'm putting a fence around the pool in any case. And that's because I used debug to get those cliffs, those big rocks, and actually a lot of the landscaping is debug as well. So if you don't know what debug is, it's kind of like extra items that you can unlock with a couple of cheats that are used to make all the background environments. So that's why, the rocks and stuff will blend in very well with the environment around the lot. And I can find a bit more of the plants that are used, throughout Solani, some of the big Monstera kind of plants and all that jazz, that's in debug. And you can get to debug by opening up the cheat console window, cheat window thing, and type in bb.show live edit objects. And then when you search, you can search for debug, and you can also just, I filtered to Solani because the debug menu is a mess. If you're not used to working with it, oh my god, it is awful to locate anything in it, but it is really fun because you get to use a lot of other items. Now, the reason these items are hidden behind these cheats in the first place is because they're not really finished. That means that the hitbox, the thing that makes sure that your Sims won't walk straight into it, probably isn't all that well done. So with these cliffs, it kind of means that they can just walk through them, and sometimes you'll even see them kind of swim into them. So there's a bit of a clipping issue, but that's why I placed the fence around the pool. Because that way I could make sure that they would always go through the one entrance I gave them. And that is, by swimming underneath that big arch thing, cliff, and then to the other end of the pool. And I love that, that's the only way to get in and out now, because before they would just be walking through the cliffs, and that was too silly. I don't know, it probably goes without saying, but this lot was playtested a lot. And it's really fun to play on, actually. I was scared that the walls or the cliffs that act kind of like the walls would make it impossible to, look around and be able to play comfortably in there. But I actually think there's plenty of space, and it's easy. It's nice. It's a nice and fun lot to play on, so I would definitely recommend it for your mermaids as well. As you can see, I've already started making kind of the interior. I don't know if you can even call it the interior when there are no walls, but kind of like the substance of the build itself, the items that the Sims will use. And it really is kind of like, I thought of it as, a mermaid hangout or a clubhouse even, or just like their sanctuary where they could go and not be bothered by other people, even though it's a Sims, so obviously other people constantly come bother them anyway. But the lot did end up having, a fully functional kitchen. I decided to use a grill instead of an oven. It just, it felt more right for the, type of build. And then they also got that big Solani grill that looks like a big fireplace where they can make some extra feasts. And I really just tried to make a bunch of hangout places, so there will end up being, that big fireplace that they can all gather around. Then there will also be, kind of like a skill building area where you can find chess and books, even a violin and an easel and stuff like that. And then there is another kind of section where there'll just be some nice couches with a big round table, and I'll play some board games on there, even though they're not functional. But I thought it would be, kind of cute to imagine that they'd play board games all night, and cross-stitch friendship bracelets too. Then there's also like a semi-functional bathroom. It's kind of like a half bath. This lot is really meant for mermaids, so there is no actually, shower or anything like that, because they just want hydration, which they get from obviously swimming around in the big pool I made them. Then I'm also going to contradict my own logic, because they can also just swim and sleep in the water, but I decided to still give them beds. So I like the idea of them all having a bed each with, their own items on the little bedside tables and all that. And I really like that big kind of like pergola. It's not really a pergola, I don't know what you call it, but the curtains and stuff that I hang around the bed, it's a beautiful item from Island Living, and really this is just my love letter to Island Living, because it's one of my favorite packs. I know a lot of people don't really like mermaids as an occult type, because they're kind of not as fleshed out as the others, but I've always just had such, such love for mermaids in general. Like, mermaids are probably my favorite occult creature kind of thing. I always wanted to be a mermaid, even though I was always a really bad swimmer, but I always felt so at home kind of anyway in the water, at least if I could touch the ground with my feet. So it's always been kind of weird, but I really do love this pack, because I love the items and I love the world. It has such beautiful magical lighting and beautiful plants and everything like that. I just think it's so dreamy. When you were a child, what kind of like occult thing did you want to be? I mean, I think a lot of us girls, when we were teenagers, we all kind of wanted like to be a vampire. Vampire Diaries was a big thing. Twilight was such a big thing. I don't know if there are any big vampire things right now for the kids now. I guess I'm not really a teenager anymore. And I guess I've also always been really drawn to witches. So witches and mermaids, they're my favorite occults in The Sims, and they're the two things I play with them very most. I don't actually play that much. I do tend to spend most of my time building, but yeah, those are definitely like my childhood favorite things that I always wanted to be. I was always one of those kids who were hoping that, maybe, I didn't get my Hogwarts letter on my 11th birthday because something went wrong and I'll get it next year. I was such a little nerd. I don't know if you were as well, but I can tell you that I was definitely a nerd. Now we're starting to get into the really nitty-gritty of the landscaping. So I started to lay down all these rocks in the bottom of the pools, kind of like make it look more like a natural pond than, the pool that was built there. I decided I didn't want to be like too perfectionist about it, so I didn't mind that, from some angles you can still like see the pool peek through and stuff like that. It didn't have to be perfect. I just thought it made it look you know, just a little bit more like a natural pond. And I think when you decide to do a build like this, at least for me, I don't really care if, you know, something clips a little bit or if there's something that you can still kind of see peek through, because really it's just kind of like a role-playing game and your imagination is half the fun. So I could definitely spend a lot more time placing a million tiny stones, but I don't really see much value in that when you can just like look at the big picture and see that, you know, gorgeous mermaid hangout space. It's obviously the same thing with the landscaping on the cliffs. Some of them will, you know, be clipping just a tiny bit because they weren't particularly made for that specific rock that I'm putting them on and stuff like that. But I think, you know, it still looks very cute and fine, and I loved putting all those, you know, tiny plants and flowers all around the cliffs. It really, you know, gave that extra color, and it was so much fun. I really enjoy landscaping this way. Anyway, as you can see, I am just scaling the items up and down and raising them up and down by using some keys on my keyboard. These are built into the game, so that way I don't have to have a tool mod or anything like that to just kind of like place these plants a little bit differently and, you know, on top of things and where they don't, you know, necessarily slot to on their own. On my keyboard, which is a Danish keyboard, I raise them up and down with the 9 and 0 keys, and then with some Danish letters to scale them up and down in size. Honestly, it used to be such a pain because I couldn't figure out where it was on my keyboard. I always saw American YouTubers talk about this, and, you know, they're just saying, you know, oh, just the bracket keys or whatever keys it was, and you know, keyboards aren't the same everywhere, so that was you know, kind of weird having to just like press every button on my keyboard to figure it out. But that's actually also how I found out to press the G to turn the grid off, and, you know, T for the top-down view, and how to really, you know, all sorts of shortcuts. So, you know, if you don't really know how to find those things on your own keyboard, I would really recommend just like trying out the different keys on your keyboard. And I can also tell you that the L key, I feel like those must be, you know, kind of universal, because L is for light, and that will change the light when you're in build mode. Things like that, they can be very basic, but you can find a lot of things if you just like explore your keyboard if you want to take things to another level. Especially if you're an international player, and a lot of the guides online you find when you're trying to Google this stuff is not available in your language with your keyboard. Anyway, as you can tell, I'm really starting to get somewhere with the decorating. I also created that cute little makeup nook, you know, where they can sit in front of a mirror and do their hair and whatnot. I feel like these are some girly girls I'm making this for. Very smart, resourceful, cute, pink, everything. So there are some fun sims that I made. But really things are starting to come together. I, you know, stopped doing too much with the floor plan. I was kind of satisfied with where everything was placed. So now it's more about the finishing touches, and I know that I'll be going outside, on the outside of the kind of grotto thing, and be doing some more landscaping and then come back inside. But really these are all just a bunch of finishing touches. Working here on the outside of the grotto, I'm really trying to draw inspiration from the environment around it. You know, it was kind of like sitting there in the middle of the lot, and it seemed like a little out of place, a little empty, and I really wanted it to blend in and be a natural part of the environment. So I went into debug again and got these palm trees, and actually they have a different swatch if you go into debug. So normally in Island Living, if you just go to the trees, you can only find the normal very green swatch, and this is a bit more like gray and frosty. I turn up the saturation a bit in my videos, so it does look a bit more green, but actually this is a different swatch, and it's kind of fun to use that sometimes too, if you didn't know there was that extra swatch in there. You can even see what I'm talking about, because sometimes I put one of the regular ones, you know, next to it before I delete them. So, you know, there are those two swatches. However, we're actually nearing the end of this video rather quickly, and there's some things I wanted to talk about before I go today. The next video will be, actually, I am looking so much forward to it. I'm only finishing this video because I really want to go on to the next one. I'm always so excited to get to the next one. So the next video will be a dark academia build for a librarian, and that's based on a comment I got from one of you guys a little while back, who suggested that, and I think it's a wonderful suggestion, and I'm really excited. I really hope I can do it justice, because I see all those amazing inspiration pictures online, and I don't know, I always feel like my builds are a little bit lacking compared to some of the other amazing speed builders I see here on YouTube, or just builders in general. So I really hope I can do the dark academia librarian's house idea justice. And also, I just really want to encourage you to, please leave your suggestions down in the comments if you have anything you'd like me to build, or if you have any specific, limited pack builds you want me to do. If you're like, oh, I only have cats and dogs and seasons, then maybe I can make a build with those 2 packs, and things like that. So I really enjoy making those builds for other people, and it might not be the next build when you comment, but I will keep them in mind always, because I do plan out my builds a little bit in advance and I have a lot of ideas. So the next build will be a suggestion from a viewer, and I'm so excited, and I hope you are too, now that you've heard about it. And if you want to see that Dark Academia Librarians build thing, then don't forget to subscribe, like this video, then it'll turn up in your recommended again. And it'll also help me out a lot to get a bigger reach. So anyway, we are of course still on this build, and if you like this video and like this build, then remember you can find it on the gallery. My ID name is the same as here. It is Sanda Sims, and it's spelled the exact same way, so you can find me on there. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. It's been a pleasure, and I can't wait to see you in the next video. Bye!